Happy Friday. Hope y'all are staying warm because it is cold as balls outside. Welcome back to another episode of Murder, Mysteries, and More. I'm Kaylee.
I'm Desi.
Don't forget to like and subscribe. Don't forget to hit the bell next to the subscribe button to turn on post notifications. Before we get into this case, we always encourage those who have useful information for any unsolved case to please report it to your local police and sheriff department. A quick disclaimer. So, in this video, we will be discussing sensitive and triggering topics, the events of September 11th, 2001. If you are uncomfortable or you are under the age of 18 years old, we do not recommend you to watch/listen to this episode. So, please click off now. Thank you.
It's Tuesday morning, September 11th, 2001. You are just dropping your kids off at school. Now you are brewing a fresh hot pot of coffee and you turn your TV to watch the daily news. Your mouth drops in horror after witnessing two planes crashing into the Twin Towers in lower Manhattan, New York City. Both crashes happened 17 minutes apart, and this day would have changed for America forever. Today, we will be discussing this disheartening tragedy of 9/11.
Okay. So, construction of the World Trade Center and the Twin Towers. So, in 1962, months after JFK announced sending his goal was to send astronauts to the moon, the Port Authority in New York had a vision. So, their vision was to build a World Trade Center, which would be a 7-building complex. It would include the Twin Towers, and they were designed to be the world's tallest towers. The budget at the time was $470 million, and in today's money, that would be worth $4 billion, which is a lot of money.
That's a lot, actually.
And the Twin Towers, they had a total of 110 stories, and they would surpass New York's iconic Empire State Building. And some facts you may or may not know about the construction is that a Japanese American architect was chosen to design the World Trade Center. The Port Authority chose Minoru Yamasaki based on his proposal. So his proposal was to build a trade center that had intimate and human-focused qualities, and the Empire building owner did oppose the project. Some issues that he had with this project is that he believed if they were to build the towers as tall as they would become unstable due to the height. They would also not be safe if a plane crashed into it or a fire broke out. And the Port Authority did use an exemption in one of the building codes. So they decided that it would be a bright idea to only use 3 staircases instead of 6, which little did they know that that was gonna cost them later on. And another fact is most of the building's stability strength was on the outside of the building. So there was not a lot of, like, for the interior part, they used the bare minimum for interior columns, and not only were corners cut during construction, but there was no like safety evacuation plan. Like if a plane were to hit one of the towers and a fire broke out, they did not have a plan on how to evacuate out of the building.
Which is trash.
Yeah.
How you gonna have a building but no evacuation plan?
Yep.
Somebody's
And it
gonna
would later cost them.
dearly. Yeah.
Yep.
But, yeah, very much did cost them. Of course, around this time of September 11th, Al Qaeda was a super big thing, and we're gonna go over that a little bit because I know there's a lot of people who actually don't know about Al Qaeda because they were too young. So Al Qaeda was actually founded by Osama bin Laden, which he is a master meme at this point because he's dead.
Yeah.
um, But in 1989, after Soviet withdrew from Afghanistan, bin Laden returned to Saudi Arabia. The U.S. did aid bin Laden during the Persian Gulf War during 1990 to 1991. In the early 90s, bin Laden praised terrorist attacks against innocent American citizens, such as the 1993 bombing of the World Trade Center. February 26, 1993, a truck bomb went off in the basement parking garage of the World Trade Center, and it killed 6 people and injured 1,000 people. 1994, after expanding Al Qaeda forces in Sudan, Saudi Arabia froze his assets and revoked his citizenship. In 1996, Sudan also expelled bin Laden, and he was forced to go back to Afghanistan. And then, if in Afghanistan, he actually received protection from the Taliban. And this motherfucker thought it would be so great to declare holy war against the U.S. and claimed that we were basically stealing all of the Middle East resources, which not true, but maybe partially true. We don't know. Bin Laden's end goal was to get the United States in a much bigger war and establish a single Islamic state.
So, 19 plane hijackers were used to carry out the attacks, and some motives of why bin Laden and Al Qaeda chose to commit the terrorist attacks are because, first of all, Laden believed the U.S. supported Israel's actions against Middle Eastern Muslims. He also did not like the U.S. foreign policy because he believed that it was harmful to Muslims. Also, he wanted to provoke us into a war against Islam because in return, Al Qaeda would gain allies. And then also, he wanted to create fear and weaken the US, but the joke's on him because after the events of 9/11 unfolded, the United States actually became more united. And some of the reasons why they chose the date September 11th is, first of all, it was an ordinary day. It was a weekday, so no one would probably suspect that something would be off or something like this would happen. And they decide to attack in the morning because there was less air traffic, and also in the morning when it comes to flights, you're more likely to experience less delays. And the building targets were the World Trade Center, which this symbolized America's economy and prosperity, the Pentagon, headquarters of the United States Department of Defense, and this symbolized our military power. And the last believed target, which this plane, the passengers on Flight 93 actually revolted against the hijackers, they believe it was headed towards the US Capitol building.
So the timeline of events went as follows. 7:59 a.m. September 11th, 2001, American Airlines Flight 11, which was a Boeing 767, took off from Boston's Logan International Airport and was headed to Los Angeles. There was 92 people aboard. 8:14, United Airlines Flight 175, which was also a Boeing 767, left from Boston and was also headed to Los Angeles. 8:19 a.m., passengers aboard the flight alert ground personnel of a hijacking, and American Airlines also alerted the FBI of this hijacking. 8:20 a.m., American Flight 77 departed from Dulles International Airport, which is outside of Washington, D.C. This plane was also headed for Los Angeles, and 65 passengers were aboard this plane. 8:24 a.m., Mohammed Atta, one of the hijackers, sent out 2 accidental transmissions. He was initially trying to communicate with the plane cabin and not the ground crew. Between 8:40 and 8:46 a.m., air traffic controllers at the Federal Aviation Administration have been notified by the North American Aerospace Defense Command's Northeast Air Defense Sector, so NEADS, about a potential hijacking on Flight 11. needs tracked Flight 11, but unfortunately they were not in the air when the first tower was hit. 8:41 a.m. during this Flight 93, which was a Boeing 757 with 44 people aboard, took off from Newark International Airport and was headed to San Francisco.
8:46 a.m., American Airlines Flight 11 hits the first Twin Tower. So at first, when the first tower was hit, many people suspect that maybe this plane crash was accidental. 8:47 a.m., 911 or 911 is flooded with emergency calls. Everyone is obviously panicking. The NYPD and the FDNY dispatch units, Port City Authority, Police Department officers evacuate the North Tower. 8:58 a.m., President George W. Bush is alerted by the White House Chief Staff Andrew Carr that a plane has crashed into the North Tower. The South Tower at first was not evacuated, and people were told to remain in place. 9:02 a.m., Port City Authority officials broadcast a change of plans. They're like, you need to get out of this tower now. And 1 minute later, at 9:03 a.m., hijackers crash United Airlines Flight 175 into the South Tower. So now both towers are burning and there are people trapped inside. And because there's only 3 staircases, it's hard for them to get out. And then 9:08 a.m., FAA bans flights going into New York or leaving from New York. And people also recognize now that because after the South Tower was hit, they now believe that this was a terrorist attack and was done intentionally. 9:21 a.m. All bridges and tunnels in New York are shut down. 9:24 a.m. FAA notified needs that flight 77 was hijacked, and this was because passengers on the planes actually did call their family members. And then 9:31 a.m., President Bush declares the incident as an as an terrorist attack on Americans.
9:37 a.m., hijackers crash a plane into the western facade into the Pentagon. 9:42 a.m., the FAA grounds all flights in the United States. 9:45 a.m., due to the terrorist attacks, the White House and the U.S. Capitol building are evacuated. Unfortunately, at 9:59 a.m., the South Tower collapsed. 10:07 a.m., brave passengers aboard Flight 93 contact their friends and family members. Their family members inform them about the terrorist attacks that occurred this morning. With that information, selfless passengers revolt against the hijackers and crash the plane in a field in Somerset, Pennsylvania. Sadly, unfortunately for them, everybody aboard died, but it did prevent a attack against whatever other target they were going for. Their brave actions likely saved the president and many other innocent lives, and many believed Flight 93 was headed to the Capitol. 10:28 a.m., the North Tower collapsed, and this day would obviously go down in American history forever.
So after 9/11, airport security changed significantly. So before 9/11, you could get on a plane and it was way less of a hassle. You could usually show up 20 minutes beforehand. However, after 9/11, the government chose to implement more safety protocols. When the flights resumed on September 14, 2001, the National Guard supplied Army personnel at airports to assist passengers with the new procedures and some changes that were made. So, first of all, ID checks were a thing. So, if you were over the age of 18 years old, you would need a government issued ID to board a plane, even if it was a domestic flight. There was also a no fly list. It, they created a database of people who are banned from flights. And then the TSA in November 2001, they were introduced, and you have to go through the TSA now. And then They also start to ban more items, especially sharp objects such as scissors, knives, and box cutters, because um, the 9/11 hijackers, some of them did have knives and box cutters that they used as weapons. And also, still to this day, we have added on more extensive security measures. For example, we have full body metal detectors, we have restrictions on liquid, so a lot of time you can't just take a regular bottle of shampoo, you gotta take a travel size. Cell phones were placed in bins now. They have to go through x-ray scanning. And then 2 years after 9/11, bulletproof and locked cockpits became standard.
September 25th, 2001, Bush addressed Congress and the nation by saying, quote, "Our war on terror begins with Al Qaeda, but it does not end there. It will not end until every terrorist group of global reach has been stopped, founded, and defeated." October 7th, 2001, both Britain and the United States decided to do an airstrike in Afghanistan at the Taliban and Al Qaeda training camps. Osama bin Laden made a statement in response to this, saying, "Our Islamic nation has been tasting the same for more than 80 years of humiliation and disgrace, its sons killed and their blood spilled, its sanctities desecrated." October 29th through the 20th, the ground war began. December 6th through the 17th, 2001, the US made an attempt to capture Osama bin Laden. However, it was unsuccessful because he escaped. Whoop-de-doo, wonder how that happened. Fucking people. March 19th, 2003, Bush decided to have troops invade Iraq, and on December 13th, 2003, Saddam Hussein is captured. December 30th, 2006, Hussein is executed because of his war crimes and crimes against humanity. August 30th, 2010, Barack Obama declared he wants to end the war in Iraq. And so on May 2nd, 2011, Osama bin Laden is killed after a successful raid in Abbottabad, Pakistan, with special U.S. armed forces. And this created a power vacuum that created the rise of the Taliban and also another 10 years of war, which we are still in war, but now instead of Al
Yeah.
Qaeda, it's ISIS.
Yeah.
Whoop de doo.
So into our lovely Reddit comments. So this one is by Whistle Rich, and they are asking, have a personal recollection of 9/11 that you like to share. This is a thread for you. Share all your personal stories. And then Tariff underscored Goodwin. I was in slash at the World Trade Center on 9/11. I didn't see the first plane hit because I was still on the 1 and 9 subway from Staten Island Ferry and getting off at the station under the World Trade Center complex. I heard on the radio a plane had hit, but I thought it was a small one. I went to the sixth floor auditorium because I had an IT associate training that day, but most of us went outside to watch the fire. That's when we saw the second plane fly through the lower Manhattan and hit the tower above us. I wrote about years ago.
Wow. That was crazy.
That's a crazy experience.
K2 Aries. I worked at a furniture store that also sold TVs. I was there at 8:30. An employee came in just before 9 a.m. and said, "Guys, there was a plane crash in NYC. It hit a building." So he started turning on the TVs, and then we saw the second plane hit. We sat there most of the day watching a wall of horror. We spent the day watching, talking, crying, and consoling each other. We felt so helpless and scared. I've never seen such a horrific and tragic event, but in the next few days and weeks, I've never seen such an outpouring of kindness and support. Fire stations had firefighters at every major intersection holding a boot in their hand for donations, and people were emptying their wallets. People traveling to New York to help, food drives, club drives, you name it. Those few weeks are burned in my memory for sure.
Frustrated TX. I was in my freshman year of college, woke up early for 9 a.m. engineering class. I heard the news of the first plane hit from my radio alarm clock and saw the second hit live. My lab partner in this class was from New York, and I knew her mother worked in finance. I got my stuff together as fast as I could and booked it to my class. She was there and hadn't heard yet. I informed her. She called her mom immediately. Turns out her mother worked for Cantor Fitzgerald, but had a meeting out of the office with another firm that morning.
Damn.
Most of our colleagues, that crazy shit. That's crazy, but that
That
is
bomb
good
got
that,
lucky.
yeah.
Damn. That's insane. Uh, Kita Tatsumi. I was at the University of Florida. Tuesday night was ladies' night at the Salty Dog. What an interesting name for a bar. We all went because college. It was super quiet that night. We all knew that everything was different now. Nobody's jokes were landing. It was one day that was totally unlike all the others that had come before it. Yeah, I mean, it was something that was very shocking because nothing really has happened like that before. Not
No,
directly
yeah.
on us, you know. Random nightmare. I was in
Oh,
ooh, I was in high school and it started out like any other day. By the second period, I had a report to the library and when I got there, the TV was on. I asked someone what happened and he said a plane hot hot plane hot the World Trade Tower. Then I remember watching the second plane fly into the second tower. The rest of the day was just us talking and changing classes until either we were picked up and or sent home. Although a few kids got to go home early before anyone else. Yeah.
yeah, I know my mom said she picked my brother up early that day.
Yeah. I
I
probably
think
would
a
have
lot of
too.
parents did, yeah.
That was a rough day for everybody. So the next one is by him, Robert. When 9/11 happened, what were you doing? Deleted said, woke up early to get ready for school. My aunt called my dad telling him that a plane crashed into the Trade Center. And a minute or two after turning on the TV around 6 a.m. California time, we watched the second plane hit. My dad later left for work, but the rest of my family and I were glued to the TV the entire day watching the news.
A&T nursery in an OR doing a clinical rotation while in nursing school, and I knew something was wrong when the folks at NPR were spooked.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Thebomb.com. Bruh. I was in kindergarten, probably eating plastic or something. Was it delicious, though?
Nama Batman. It was a lot later in the day in Ireland where I was. The radio was in on the kitchen. I was only half listening. I thought to myself, wow, they're really talking a lot about a movie for this radio station. Then it dawned on me.
Deleted said, eating a egg McDuffian hash brown and a Coke before work started.
Sounds about right.
Yeah.
So this one is a really interesting one. And I would also like to know your guys' answer. So this is by JB's Answers 26. Of the four hijacked flights on 9/11, which do you believe would have been the most terrifying for the passengers? And news evidence. My opinion is United 93. The passengers knew that other planes had been hijacked, used as weapons, and everyone on board died. They knew whether they took control from the hijackers or not, they were going to die. I like to think the other plane's passengers assumed they'd be going back to the airport, meet the hijackers' demands, and be released because that happened with past hijackings. And that death was so sudden they were unaware. We'll never know, though.
Tucka Kian, I think 175 because the passengers on the left saw the other tower burning as they approached. What an awful final image.
That, too, I think all of them would be.
I think so too because, like, I don't know, man. They're all bad. It was.
Yeah.
That's terrifying. I would be terrified. Completely. especially like the first plane, you just don't know because you're like,
Yeah,
where am I
you
going?
don't even get answers. Bristol tell so 93. 175 is a runner-up, though. However, the hijackers on that flight were much less experienced than autos on 11 and were flying very erratically and much faster than 11. Reports say that the passengers were vomiting and being thrown around from all the shaking, and they almost missed the tower in the last few seconds.
Damn.
Yeah.
Gray from Hangar 18, Flight 77. The huge 360-degree turn it took as it was going down to hit the Pentagon at over 500 miles per hour would have been terrifying. There was also children on board as well. Oh no, I can't imagine. There were 11 and old enough to realize what was happening. Then there is the Falkenberg family traveling with their 8 and 3-year-old daughters. I didn't realize there was
Yeah.
kids on that flight. What started as a typical Tuesday on September 11th, 2001 quickly turned into a major tragedy. It is unfathomable to think of those who went into work in the towers that day to never be seen again. Don't forget the selfless firefighters who also risked their own lives to save other people who actually did survive. We should also remember those selfless passengers on Flight 93 whom revolted against the hijackers. 9/11 will forever leave a long lasting scar on America, but united we do stand, Chief. Thank you for listening to another episode of Murder Mysteries and More. Remember to always keep your eyes open